Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. Today, I would like to continue on with our exploration through this set, which was released earlier this year, 2020, by the Criterion Collection. The name of the set is The Complete Films of Agnes Varda. And inside we have, of course, the booklet and also things that the actual compartments that house the discs, as well as another larger booklet format. Today I'd like to focus in on the second disc, or Program 2, which is called Early Varda. So the three films that are included as part of this Program 2 disc Early Varda are Pointe Courte and O Saisons, au Château, and Du Côté de la Côte. So we have three films. One is a feature-length, Pointe Courte, and the other two being of a little bit shorter, approximately 20-30 minutes for each of those films. And Pointe Courte is listed in the current materials as being from 1955. I should point out that the earlier Criterion DVD disc, which we have here in this box, had it listed at 1954, but we'll go with the booklet, the current booklet, 1955. And the booklet also indicates O Saisons, au Château at 1958, and Du Côté de la Côte, also indicated here, 1958. What we have here, of course, is what is listed, which is Early Varda, and these come in, of course, the early initial stage of what would become Varda's really long and illustrious and very eventful film career. Pointe Courte, to begin with, is one of those very important seminal works in French cinema, not least of which because of the fact that it was Varda's first feature-length work. And it explores many themes and aspects that I think we will come to know and appreciate and love about the films of Varda, namely a real sense of space and environment, of a timeliness and empathy of camera and place. This area of Pointe Courte in set, and we have a real personal connection between personalities and the place itself. So the personalities that I refer to being not just the people that we see depicted in the film, not just the couple, in particular the young man who is one half of the couple that we see as part of the film. Not only do we see connections between these people and the place, Pointe Courte, but we also see, or we also know of the connection biographically between the place and Agnes Varda herself, in terms of her associations with this particular area of the country and her childhood. So we already get a sense of one aspect of Varda's filmography in this film, namely the importance of place and the importance of infusing personality and the human spirit with the place itself. So there's something quite intertwined and very beautiful about that. And as we will see, or as we have seen in some past Varda films and also Varda films going forward, we will see such an importance placed on the notion of the environment and how it either interacts with or counters against the particular people or characters that inhabit such place. So this is one factor that I think is very important about this film. Another factor, of course, that's very important about La Pointe Courte is how much it is an exploration of the people and the real life personages and visages and identities, if you will, of this particular place. And so this goes along with the notion of Varda and her camera trying to capture a moment of reality. You can call it a spirit of documentary-like cinematic expression, if you will, in the sense that a lot of this film can be described as having roots in a documentary-like way to capture time, place, mood, and people. And that's certainly at play here in this film. And as we will see, or as we have seen with other works by Agnes Varda, we will see a lot of this in terms of the notion of capturing a kind of truth in cinema. And what is also really great about this film, there's so many great things, but another thing that's great is how this is related to or otherwise counteracts against the other main component of the film, which is this story of a couple who are coming to this place, and they are, and in particular for the young man, he describes the place as being the place where he came from. And this couple is essentially trying to reevaluate their relationship, which we understand is going through somewhat of a crisis type of situation in terms of an emotional attachment between the two. So while we have the story of La Pointe Courte and the people that inhabit the place and the various stories that are involved with their stories, we have this separate story, but it's also connected. We have the separate story of the young couple, and they are essentially together, and we get their musings, their philosophical approaches, their thoughts and their expressions to themselves and to each other. So this is a really fascinating dynamic juxtaposition between something that we can see as being almost a constructed, and I mean that in a positive way, a constructive cinematic piece that is the story of the young couple. And then we have the other component, which is the stories of this place and the various people and the families and the goings on between parents and children, between men and women, between the elderly generation and the younger generation, and between the authorities and the citizenry, and everything about that. Children, and there are happy points, there are sad points, there are points of real togetherness and bonding. There are other points of real isolation. So it runs the gamut in terms of the human experience. So there are those stories here. So in other words, we have two components that are joined together in this film, La Pointe Courte, which is so interesting because we have, I think, very strikingly, an example of what is so great about Varda's cinema, which is the notion of the blending of the real and the cinematic, the down-to-earth and the documentary feel versus the narrative fiction type of story. And it's not so clear exactly where the line is, because I would say there is a sense of maybe overlap between those two fields of cinematic storytelling, if you will. In other words, they are completely integrated with each other, and thus they feel wholly organic to the whole, thus making each component, I think, feel comfortably intertwined with the other. So we don't get a jarring sense, if you will, but we do get an integrated whole feel of an experience when we're watching this film. And along the way, we do get what I like to refer to as the camera of empathy from Agnes Varda, in terms of how she shoots, her camera captures and shoots her the people that she's filming, the subject matter, the people, and you can really get a sense of the care and the love that the camera is giving to all these characters, and also too the couple that are their own separate component, but it's also integrated. We get the sense of they are obviously from. They are visiting the town, so they bring with them the sense of the countryside and the city life, and sort of maybe intimately or maybe indirectly, we get this juxtaposition, if you will, of the cosmopolitan and also the rural. So, and I think inherent in that, whether directly or indirectly so, we do get this sense of class discussions of class. And this also is rooted, of course, in the documentary feel of Varda's camera of empathy. So I think this is incredibly important. Also, we get great shots, compositions that are artistically composed, that really feel like we have an author here, one who is really concerned with giving us dynamic expressions of poetic cinema. And this is really another amazing thing about Varda. She gives us the power of her cinematic poetry through her subjective lens, and yet she also provides a loving and very much a respectful cinematic eye to the proceedings writ large. And that is a rare feat indeed, my friends. And so we get this and so much more in this very beautiful work, La Pointe Courte. Now, this has been described, of course, as being, some people have described it as being a precursor to the Nouvelle Vague. Some people have described it as being the film that initiated the Nouvelle Vague. And I think all of that is true and more. I mean, this is a really important work. This is such an important work in terms of where it came in the time span of the Nouvelle Vague. Of course, it came really, really early, and so yes, in many ways, those people who say that this initiated the French New Wave, I think they are. I agree with that. And there are techniques and there are cinematic tricks that are employed, and I mean that positively. There are designs of the frame that are immaculate. This therefore shows us the wonderful blend of the liveliness of the work, and it feels fresh and it feels alive, and at the same time it is rooted in the cinema of Agnes Varda. Of course it is, right? Of course it is, because it is a film that cares. It is a film that is truly poetic and full of art and vitality, and it is a film about place and style, and it is also finally a film that, as we know from Varda's biography, it is one that is about a place that is very important in Varda's life, so we can already get a sense of this film being one with Varda's life itself. In other words, this is another example of Varda equals cinema, and we get that so lovingly portrayed here in this film, an example of early Varda. That is La Pointe Courte. And then we get, in the order of the curated Criterion order here, we get the next film, which is O Saisons, O Châteaux. And this is, in essence, almost like a visual essay type of documentary, which is covering the Loire Valley part of the country. And we get many shots, landscapes, vistas, the chateau, and also the scenery and the environment in this beautiful color. Now, I think this is another really fascinating glimpse into the mind and workings of Varda. As we know, this is a film that was commissioned. We still get the great trained eye and sensibility of Agnes Varda, the filmmaker. And I would suggest also that we really get a sense of place and time and environment, and how closely linked these elements of existence and earth and time and place, how all these elements are so closely linked with the camera of Varda and what it is she aims to capture. We are not given a historical, straightforward documentary type of approach, but we are given what are, I think, really well-composed shots, and we get a sense of the environment from that. And so what we get, therefore, from this film, and then the other film to come, which I'll talk about in a moment, is Varda's concern with the place and history and the lived-in aspects of these, and the people that inhabit and live in the various spots and the various little corners of the world that she is shooting with her camera. So this is also an example, therefore, of the camera of empathy and capturing the moment, and also capturing the place and how it is so linked with the people that she is also showing us. So this is O Saisons, O Châteaux. Then we get the third film in this curated order, which is called Du Côté de la Côte, and we have another type of visual essay type of non-narrative documentary type of short film. This time the subject is the French Riviera and the coastline and the beach, and this community where we have many people living. We have people around the coast, and also just somewhat separated from the coast. But so we get a whole sense of the community at large, which is, I think, a really lovely and quite vivid description and depiction of this particular part of the world in Du Côté de la Côte. Now, what I really love here too is this is yet again another example, just as we saw in O Saisons, O Châteaux, the idea of the merging of time, place, people, and cinema, and the camera of empathy that tries to capture as much as possible in as loving detail as possible. This is the caring camera of Varda, but it's also a cinematic example of Varda's wit and her concerns about society and about history, and about how history is inextricably linked with the people, and how it can be this important thing, and yet it is captured in a very ethereal type of way. So we get narration, which also gives this similar kind of direct, and yet sometimes maybe somewhat playful or ironic sense, which is, I think, at the really heart of what Varda's cinema is about. It is very direct, it is very honest, but it is also potentially very playful, and it is very clever, not just with languages and images, but also with words and sounds. So therefore, she's a very keen-eyed filmmaker, but she also has a very sharp ear and a sharp wit and a keen and a very sharp intelligence that also gives way to a caring camera. So, which is about place and time and the people, and the way that she shoots the place, and the way that she shoots the people, and the way that she really seems to care about giving due attention to both, and many other aspects. It's really remarkable. So we are getting, therefore, in these films, La Pointe Courte and O Saisons, Au Château, and Du Côté de la Côte, we are getting three films which I think showcase very strongly Varda's concerns and her perspectives, if you will, about how to capture, or the importance of capturing, the essence of place and time, and how that is so linked with her as not just a filmmaker, but as a person and as a human being as well. So I think this is a really wonderful example of the early works of Varda. We also get great images of, as we know, Varda is also very concerned and very much a filmmaker that likes to capture nature and likes to capture certain types of animals and certain settings. Also, we also all know that the importance of the beach, the imagery of the beach is very important in Varda's work, because it lends itself to a sense of frolic and play on the one hand, but it also, I think, inherently and maybe even subtly lends itself very nicely to a kind of discussion of class and class dynamics. And so it's a very, I think, nuanced and rich set of cinematic imagery and vocabulary that she presents even during these early years, which, as I say, or try to suggest, are really magnificent. So this is I think a really good collection of where to start when it comes to what is termed early Varda. So with that, my friends, this is the breakdown of the films in this particular Program 2 set, or Program 2 disc. Now, when we talk about the supplements that are included here, let me point out that La Pointe Courte has its own little section on the disc, and you can click on it and it'll have the section which has a number of supplements. So first it has a discussion, contemporary one in 2012 between Mathieu, Almalric and Agnes Varda. And it starts actually with a little bit of a solo intro, if you will, from Varda herself, and then it leads into the discussion in sort of the patio. And it's a very intimate one, and they talk about first films and the importance of maintaining a sense of self-worth and fidelity when trying to compose one's first film, which can be quite I mean, I'm not a filmmaker, but I can imagine just what a daunting task it could potentially be. So it's a very, I think, a very charming discussion between the two of them, the two filmmakers, approximately 9 minutes. And then we get a 2002 interview with Agnes Varda. And this is very important because this is an interview that where she talks in, I think, very enlightening and revealing detail about the specifics of La Pointe Courte, the importance of set, the area, and also how that led to La Pointe Courte itself, and also the significance of William Faulkner, and how the story structure of the Wild Palms really gave her the confidence and inspiration to develop the very, I think, radical story structure that we see composed in La Pointe Courte, in terms of the alternating attention given to the two strands of the narrative in this film. It's very fascinating stuff, and plus she goes into also the way in which she was approaching the filming itself, the camera work, and also the people in the community, and also concerns and issues and also stories about post-production and also distribution and the like. And so we're talking about a young filmmaker who is very filled with energy and filled with a lot of as I say, intelligence and wit and a lot of caring with the filmmaking, and it shows through so lovingly in this interview. And she's also talking about, from her perspective, what she always says to women who are trying to be filmmakers in this particular industry. She is trying to be very encouraging, as she always is, to young filmmakers who are trying to make a start, and to have them study and learn and be apprentices and that sort of thing. So all in all, it's a wonderful interview, really great. As I say, I've pointed out this earlier DVD, which is from the set itself, the earlier DVD set by Agnes Varda. We actually saw this interview here, so it's nice to see it return to the Criterion Collection, this time in the Blu-ray set. So essential interview. And then we have an 8-minute interview, again with Agnes Varda, and this is from Cinéastes de notre temps, and this is from May 1964. And this is another one-on-one interview with Varda, but this time in 1964. And so she gives us, closer to the time of the making of La Pointe Courte and the other films here, she gives us a sense of really direct comments, and refreshingly direct comments, in this 1964 interview, which is also found on the earlier DVD, by the way. And we have this sense of a real purpose in her filmmaking, and a real, I love the kind of confidence that she is showing us here, and she gives us very honest takes and honest assessments and honest comments about this film, and also the subsequent commissioned work, and how she approached that, and how she ended up turning those films into opportunities, and very strong opportunities indeed, because those films, the commissioned films, O Saisons, which ended up being films like O Saisons, au Château, etc., they became, I think, very much not just commissioned works, but they became very much intertwined with the identity of the cineast who is Agnes Varda. So well done, Agnes Varda, indeed, for being able to achieve that. And I think we get a sense of this kind of achievement, if you will, in this interview, among other things too. So another essential one, absolutely essential, Cinéastes de notre temps, from 1964. And then, to round out the supplements for La Pointe Courte, we have a shorter conversation with Jhumpa Lahiri, the very famous author. It's approximately 3 minutes. This is from the Criterion Channel series Adventures in Moviegoing from 2017, where she speaks about the importance and significance of this film, La Pointe Courte, the way she sees it. Very valuable comments about, again, the idea of place, and the idea of capturing this rural or countryside type of or seaside type of life. That is meant to be a somewhat of a documentary type of feel, because it is capturing the reality of the place, and also the real almost experimental and radically brilliant approach that Varda captures and espouses and really adopts in making this film. So it's a short discussion from Jhumpa Lahiri, so 3 minutes, but still very much worth it. So, Adventures in Moviegoing, about La Pointe Courte. Then we have the other two films, O Saisons, au Château, and Du Côté de la Côte, and each has its own very brief introduction from Agnes Varda. The introductions are from 2007, and so she speaks, Varda does, about very briefly about the circumstances that led up to, or the aspects that are important from her point of view with regard to Au Saisons, au Château and Du Côté de la Côte, respectively. So we get those as supplements to those two films, respectively, included in this Criterion Program 2 disc. Now, as for the transfers that are relied upon for these films, we can get information about the transfers starting on page 190 of this booklet. And so based off of this, we understand that, for example, Du Côté de la Côte is 2K transfer resolution, and the Au Saisons, au Château is 4K transfer resolution, and the same is true for La Pointe Courte. And so these are based off of 4K or 2K digital transfers. And I think the image, for example, La Pointe Courte, I think looks really vivid and quite sharp and lovely. And I thought the earlier DVD high definition, high def transfer looked really lovely. But I think this Blu-ray looks fantastic in terms of La Pointe Courte. Now, as for Au Saisons, au Château and Du Côté de la Côte, these are really beautifully lush color films, and the color really is vibrant, very vibrant indeed. I have read on some online early reviews of this set and this particular disc in specifically, about how to some maybe the colors for the two shorter films might seem a little bit too vibrant in some places, maybe a bit too much of a focus on the yellow tints. And so I really can't speak too much about that, although I can say that yes, the colors really do pop out, and so that's one thing to consider. And one thing I can point out, though, is that at the very start of the presentation here of Du Côté de la Côte, there's a little title card, and it talks about the restoration details, the Cinéastes restoration in 2015 for Du Côté de la Côte, for example. And it says there, color grading supervised by Agnes Varda. And so, while I can't speak specifically to O Saisons, au Château, what I can say is, relying on this particular title card information with respect to Du Côté de la Côte, I think we can say that perhaps the color that we see in this particular release could be said to be a color scheme that is to the approval of Agnes Varda. Again, I can't say anything to what might have happened between 2015 and now with Criterion's release. However, just keep that in mind in case you are interested. And so that is to say that, at least with regard to one of the films, I think the color is, I personally think it works very well with the film in terms of, again, the capturing of the place and the sunshine, etc. But just keep that in mind for those who have a really discerning and sharp eye when it comes to these sorts of things, that there is this talk. However, I don't think it is in any way overly detrimental to the experience, at least from my point of view, because I feel like overall the experience for me, visually speaking, in terms of these two shorter films, was very pleasant and very enjoyable, and it wasn't at all, I didn't feel any distraction. And so I only became aware of this by doing a little bit of reading up on some reviews of some other people who have explored this set. So just keep in mind that this is something that has been expressed. So if it is a concern, then but I think also it's a concern that's not necessarily shared by everyone. But it might be something that you should just keep in mind for those who are concerned about these sorts of things. But for me, please note that it was a very pleasant and very enjoyable and not at all distracting, not at all distracting experience in terms of watching O Saisons au Château and Du Côté de la Côte, respectively. I thought it was really pleasant to watch and really vivid and lovely to look at. So there is that. And with that, I want to end the conversation here for now with regard to Program 2. I like the flow of the curated order, the program order thus far, and so we have a sense of the early concerns, or the concerns of Varda at an early stage of her career, let's put it that way. So I like this trajectory, and so I will speak a little bit more about this aspect of her filmography, and also I will speak a little bit more about the booklet in an upcoming video that I plan to speak about, where I plan to speak about the set as a whole and the packaging and the films that are included, and maybe some that might not necessarily be included, I don't know, but we'll have to talk about that. I will plan to do that in a later video. So my thoughts about this area of her filmography, at least as it relates to the Criterion set and other parts, aren't finished yet. So please note that this is an ongoing video discussion. I will speak more about this and other topics in a later video. But for now, with regard to Program 2 itself and what it provides to us, I think this is a very great presentation. And it holds varying aspects of the multifaceted and fascinating career of Agnes Varda, even early on at this stage. And we can tell immediately just what a true and larger-than-life artist and person that Agnes Varda was. What a great collection of films. So here we have Programme to La Pointe Courte, and O Saisons, Au Château, and Du Côté de la Côte. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much again, my dear friends, for your time as always, and cheers.